Hello lovely people, welcome back to my Newbies Guide series for Aura Kingdom. If you haven't watched my first video, go check it out. It lightly covers every class and starter Eidolon, as well as has a discussion about the monetization systems in the game, which I think is a really important consideration if you're thinking about starting a new game. For both people who plan to be free to play, as well as people who plan to spend. So, from here you're in-game and ready to go. What's next? Let's start with leveling up. As I said in my last video, you will not really need to grind pre-100. If you want to level up, just progress the main quest. That is the orange-yellowish exclamation marks. If you check my old Rush livestreams, you'll see the main quest will take you right up to 98 or 99 if you just go with them. Purple exclamation quests are special one-time quests you can only do across your whole account just once. For example, right near the start NPC Sheila, you will see a purple exclamation mark over this kiddo here to get your Envoy support cube. This is a special item that you could open every 10 levels right up to 110 or S10. It has supplies that will help you make your way through the game more easily, as well as a full key for Shirayuki, a pretty good Eidolon for new players. And while we're at it, the blue exclamation marks are daily quests and the green exclamation marks are oddities that give achievements or titles the first time you complete them. There's a few things you should do while leveling on the main quest to make the most of the huge escalator. When you reach level 30, you'll get a chest in the mail that includes another set of boxes you can open every 10 levels. More presents! This box, the Uber Goodie Bag, will be sent to every one of your characters, so feel free to use its supplies as much as you need. Anyway, inside you will get a 30-day blue sprite that buffs your experience from quests, and every 10 levels, you will get some 1-hour scrolls called Proof of Mission that you can use to buff your quest experience for just an hour on demand. I highly recommend using those only when you're grinding up the main quest. If you get a VIP sprite, the pink ones, these are usually from the gambling table, Paragon, you can stack those at the same time as the blue 30-day sprite for even more quest experience. Unlike the Proof of Mission scrolls, sprites count down even when you're offline, so I'd recommend using them on weekend when you can play to make the most of them. Note that the only place you can get Proof of Missions right now is in those Uber Goodie Bag boxes, so once you're out, you're out. They're not currently being sold anywhere else. With these tips, you shouldn't ever hit a grind wall until right before Awakening, and if you make use of more buffs, like Elite Sprites or VIP Sprites, probably won't need any grind at all. Elite Sprites are available in the LP in-game currency store or XP cash store, but watch out, blue sprites and elite sprites can't be used at the same time. If you use one, you will overwrite your 30-day blue sprite. After you awaken, you will gain access to a dungeon where normal blue sprites drop, the Vault of Eternity party mode, with 1-day and 3-day variants. So don't hesitate to use those blue sprites generously before awakening when you play. As for VIP and Elite, those are much more limited and you should consider using them when you think you can make the most of them. As you're doing your main quest, you'll probably end up wondering where to find things. We don't really have an updated wiki, but the reason for that is that we don't need a wiki, and the reason for that is that we have the database website. Search any item or NPC, see where it is. The in-game encyclopedia also has tracking functions for some items, but it's not as easy to search. This database is maintained by an extremely dedicated member of the community who is so helpful. I'm not sure whether they really want to be identified all that much, as they don't have their name explicitly or easily visible, so I will keep with that and just say, we know who you are and we really appreciate it. Anyway, it also has timers, charts of effect for gear and reshuffling, and an Envoy path simulator. 90% of questions about game items and NPCs can be answered by searching the database. For example, let's say you want to check what kind of food and drink item you want to use for your current level. Head to the list of food, add a filter for your level, or a filter for the rarity, and see your options. Another big thing it has, which we will get to more in the next video, is the specific stats of bosses. Once you get to later game, you will need to worry about stats like pen and damage dealt reduction, but these aren't explicitly visible anywhere in the game. You can check the boss or dungeon stats in the database to help you see what you need to prioritize with your gear. Okay, so now you know how to level up and how to find things. What else do newbies need? Envoy paths, stats, masteries, and gear, of course. First off, when it comes to envoys, masteries, and stats, you shouldn't worry too much about where to put your points. You can respec your points and envoy at any time with just some gold. You can ask in the Discord for help with your envoy, or you can use the database website simulator to craft your own. Each class has a unique Envoy path table, and all of them will be different, and sometimes depend on your subclass or element as well. So I'm not going to get too deep into this here. Again, I strongly recommend asking or searching in the Discord for envoys to see the conversations people are having about the path for your class of choice. So for now, let's move on to the stats. On your experience bar, you will see little red and blue triangle icons. These represent the stat points you will get to allocate once you reach the experience point that they're at. Sometimes it's not even a full level to get the next one. You have offensive and defensive stats, and you can use these points to increase the flat stats of your choice. For the offensive point, you're going to want to aim for 50% speed first. This affects your skill cooldowns as well as your dot ticks. Next up is crit. Aiming for 80% should be fine. Later in game, you will be able to cap both speed and crit with just gear. Once you're capped on both of those, you can start putting points into damage. In later game, dungeons will debuff you just for standing inside, so make sure to check your stats while inside dungeons when you're speccing your points. For your defensive points, your defense should be fine around 70 to 80%. Once you start affording gear, you won't need all your points here anyway. Anything extra can go into HP. Evasion is primarily only used in PvP. If you're using a nocturnal effect weapon, you don't need to worry about taking a bit of damage, and the big red carpets that bosses use on us ignore evasion anyway. Next up, we have Masteries. You have 6 slots to modify your skills or add effects to your attack in the Masteries tab. You can swap these at any time without a cooldown as long as you're not in combat. You upgrade them with Mastery Scrolls that are sold by class masters, drop in-game, or exchange in the encyclopedia. I would recommend looking them up in the database if you're trying to find a specific one. 2 of the 6 Mastery slots, General Skills and Advanced Skills, are unique to your class, and just like Envoys will vary based on your element or subclass. But for the remaining 4, there's some easy best choices for new players. For attack spec, you want Zeal, a chance for extra damage while attacking. Hands down, this is your best choice here. We love Zeal so much, we casually call most extra damage chances in the game Zeals. At its highest level, this is a 10% chance to do 110% extra damage. This extra damage is listed as an extra hit in your damage monitor. For defensive spec, you want Extreme Speed. This increases your move speed and gives you a little bit of useless evasion. You may want to use Courage if you're struggling against a boss a bit, but for general use, Extreme Speed is where it's at. Since the only grind you have in early game is running through the story, moving faster is the easiest way to make that go faster. Note that endgame meta usually involves having a ton of move speed too. We love move speed. For tactical spec, you want Break Defense. This reduces the enemy's defense by 1% based on your mastery level. If you're in a party, multiple people using Break Defense does not stack, so you could consider changing if someone else has a higher level Break Defense, but when you're alone or in Awakening, this is non-negotiable. Mind you, there is a cap for a % death reduction. We will talk about that in the next video. And finally, for special skills, as a new player you will want to use Best Defense. This will convert some of your flat damage into extra defense and will really help you get your defense high. In later game, once your defense is already capped with gear, you can swap it over to Deep Blue to be a damage buff, but one thing to keep in mind is that after Awakening, that is, after level 100, overcapped stats will provide some kind of secondary benefit. For example, overcapped defense bleeds into your HP. However, stats converted using masteries like Best Defense do not count towards overcap, so it's best to switch to Deep Blue once you manage to overcap without it. You will gain no benefit from the conversion to defense once you are capped on defense. We'll talk more about this in the next video, I swear. I think we got a bit too deep in the weeds here, so let's move on. Because it's time to talk about gear. Armor first. You will get a set of Aura equipment armor that levels up with you from level 1 to 40, and then, in the Uber goodie bag that we've talked about a lot, you will get a set of advanced Aura equipment that levels up with you from 40 to 75. These sets are nice because their set bonus is extra monster kill experience. People will tell you to use this gear and they're not wrong. You can definitely get through content in it because it's very helpful and scales with you through the bulk of the early game. But you will not be able to cap your speed while wearing it. You might get frustrated by that, but it's not you. It's not that you're doing something wrong. This armor just doesn't have speed. I know this goes against what I said in the section about how important capping speed is, but it's much easier to just not worry about having to upgrade your armor for the bulk of the early game so you can stow away all your fortification supplies for when you get to 90. And then once you get to 90, it's go time. My personal recommendation is to wait until level 90 to start forting up your gear, at which point you can use the level 90 DPS gear set you get from the New Player's Cube. There's a set in both the Envoy support cube that you only get once on your account, and in the level 90 box from the Uber goodie bag that you get on every character, so you will definitely get this set. Level 90 gear is almost a must, as you will want to use the level 90 armor enchantments on them. I'll explain that more in the next video. Side note, this armor does have speed, so you will be able to cap your speed once you switch to the level 90 set. Go ahead and start forting it up. A lot of players use it after Awakening as well, so you will not need to make a new set right away at S1. I was able to pass my Awakening, with a little struggle mind you, in that gear set on my fresh account. The major thing that I was missing was my HP. My damage was fine, so this set will definitely do, especially on stronger DPS classes, meaning you can prep HP and defensive boosting drink and foods to make it easier than what I went through. And finally, the last thing you need to do to get your armor ready is to go talk to your classmaster Navia and buy yourself a set of secret stones. Read over the effects and choose the ones that you like for your skills, then buy a bunch of them until you get the stats that will help you in Awakening. Each stone will add 2 extra stats when you buy it. Personally, I recommend these stats for your Awakening. Damage percent, which is detail damage. We'll talk about what that means in the next video. Crit damage, more is better, obviously. And accuracy percent. When you use energy to upgrade the stones, it only increases the damage of the specific skill that stone is for, so start with your main DPS skill. When you level up the stones to 70, you can also evolve them to get 3 stats per stone, but that also randomizes the stats again, and I don't know that it's necessarily worth doing that before Awakening your first time. So basically, don't get too picky about your stones being perfect right now. Usually if one of them is great, I keep it for pre-evolution use. Also, unlike enchantments, you can take secret stones in and out of gear as you like. If you get a perfect stone, you can keep it and use it on your next set of gear. For weapons, using a nocturnal sub-weapon is highly recommended, basically no matter what your class or subclass is. You won't be able to rely on lifesteal as much in Awakening, as you'll be nerfed quite a bit, but it's the best way to handle self-sustain in the majority of the game. Usually you get a nocturnal weapon by crafting weapon cores until you get lucky and get a nocturnal core, or you can buy one off another player, but that can be expensive, so your next best option is to buy your sub-weapon from a merchant and check the random generated stats it gets until you get a nocturnal. This is what I used for basically all of my run on Scrub. The downside of this is that you can't use a weapon enchantment on one of the NPC shop weapons. I did ultimately buy a level 80 nocturnal core to craft a level 80 sub-weapon. Crafted weapons have extra effects and stats, so they will help a lot. This is highly recommended. Level 90 would be even better if you can afford it. And finally, for your main weapon, when you get your Aura armor, you will also get a voucher for the encyclopedia to grab your very own Aura weapon. These level up with you, same as your armor. And again, at level 40, you can get the advanced Aura weapon, which will stick with you up to 75. At the end of Demerek Mines, the 6th map, you will also get an interesting weapon, the Harvey series, and I'll take this chance to also introduce you to the starting gear system that works for both your armor and weapons. You can buy as many copies of your Harvey weapon as you like for 10 silver each, from Kular, next to the teleport in Navia. This is seriously dirt cheap. Buy a whole bunch, then head over to a blacksmith NPC. By combining 2 of these weapons, you can make a 1-star weapon, and then by combining 2 1-star weapons, you can make a 2-star weapon, and so on and so forth, adding extra damage to your weapon up to 5-star. Make sure to keep the highest percent weapon as your final one, and you will have a really nice mid-game weapon that will outperform the advanced Aura ones for a while. You eventually need the Harvey series weapon for your main quest in later games, so if you lose it somehow, you can also just grab another one from Kular at that time as well. Anyway, neither of those weapons will cut it for your first Awakening, so once you're at 90, your choice depends on your class a bit. Crafting a level 90 weapon with a good core is a solid move for any class. My recommendations would be the crit damage core or the defense reduction core for your first Awakening. But you also have the option to use dragon points and the Sky Tower emblems you receive from the newbie goodie bags to exchange in the encyclopedia for a Sky Tower level 95 weapon. Depending on your class, if the effect is related to your best skill, you might have a good case for this being the best choice. And it's also cheaper. Weapon secret stones are a little different from armor ones, as you can get your hands on some nice ones in special dungeons. These will probably be challenging to farm for you, so check out the auction to see if anyone is selling one you like. Long term, you probably want to get your hands on a Lava Stone, which has damage as a base stat, but for Awakening, a Thunderous, which has 10% HP and damage taken minus 2%, or a Dark Thunder, which has crit rate plus 7% and max HP plus 5%, might be okay options if you can find them cheap, which is possible as most endgame players focus on the Lava Stones. You can only slot a matching stone in your weapon, so make sure you buy it for the right class. Your swap weapon can also use a secret stone, but again, it has to match the weapon type to slot in. And in the end, if this all seems like too much, you don't have to struggle through Awakening like I did if you're not having fun. If you just want to move on to access the S level 1 maps to start your grind there, you have the option to buy the Awakening key fragments from the LP in-game currency store, under the very last category, Others in the Consumables tab, or the XP store, under the New Players section. I strongly recommend not buying the fragments from LP or the key from XP until you get to the quest where you have to start fighting. If you buy some, then for any reason have to abort the quest midway and retake it, because they're considered quest items, players have reported in the past that the key pieces were removed from their inventory. Just buy them when you're in the instance and staring down the Shadow Knight. Okay, and finally one more thing you might want to start collecting right away. Eidolons, the real heroes of the game. In early game, you'll get some Eidolons in the main quest and one from the support cube, which I already mentioned. These Eidolons are your starter, Sigrun, Azuria, Gigas, Alias, and Shirayuki. But beyond that, you have to farm them. Here's the best ways to get some early on. First up, the 3-chest temple in Crescent Hill. This is the easiest, fighting-wise, place to get some Eidolon fragments and some LP. Pick a chest of a level you think you can beat, and then use the item inside to get a random Eidolon spawn. If you don't get an item when you open the chest, it actually means you're lucky. A cutscene should start for the rare spawn Cecila. When you complete some maps of the main quest, you'll get some Eidolon spawn items from Belinus, and those can actually be used in here. This instance resets every 6 hours on the 6 and 12s, so if you're playing just before or just after a reset time, hop in twice. The Otherworld field maps at Kaktakara after level 50 are one of the best places to farm Eidolons in early game. This is actually how I got most of my Eidolons on my fresh account. They're a little challenging when they first unlock at level 50, so come back when you can solo them. Otherworld Port Scandia, which is level 50, Otherworld Halonia Coast, which is level 60, and Otherworld Crescent Hill, which is level 70, are the ones you want to do. The higher level ones don't spawn Eidolons. The Eidolons will spawn even in solo mode, and you can spawn multiple in one run. Each elite you kill has a chance to spawn an Eidolon, and the elites are the ones that have the icons on the map. These dungeons reset every 3 hours and can spawn 12 different basic Eidolons. That's Gigas, Alias, Eligos, Sigrun, Belchandra, Azuriel, Vayu, Kelkulan, Yarnaros, Bahadur, Kotonoha, and Tigerius Caesar. You will get your hands on some +5 drop charms, whether that's from daily login presents, present boxes, or rolling some Paragon. Use them on the Eidolons here. I was able to get about 5 fragment drops just from killing one Eidolon by using those drop charms, and these ones also have a chance to drop full keys. Bonus, when you run these dungeons, you'll get Secret Stone energy and fortification scrolls if you need them. Next up are Eidolon soul boxes. Almost every quest will get you a currency called tokens. You might not have noticed, but you've probably already got some. You can trade these tokens to class masters in Navia for various items, and one of those items is Ancient Eidolon Fragments. 300 tokens gets you 30 fragments that you can fuse with a soul box for 1 Eidolon fragment. Your options are Eligos, Belchandra, Yarnaros, Bahadur, and Tigerius Caesar. Remember that means these are 3,000 tokens for a full key, so I would recommend saving the soul boxes for when you're really close to one of these Eidolons. Next up, the Temple of Gaia path modes. Starts at level 60, has solo and party. You have to pick a side, and each side has different Eidolons, but these ones don't have a chance to drop full keys, and their chance to drop fragments at all is much lower than the other worlds that we were talking about earlier, so I don't recommend using charms here if you have limited charms. It might be tough to beat these even in solo mode, especially right at level 60. You can talk to the light orbs on either side of the selection orb to get a buff to help you out. But even if you can't fully beat this dungeon, go as far as you can every day. You can get Eidolon experience items and greater crests here, which will help a lot with unlocking the star buffs for Eidolons. For more information about that, check out my video on Eidolons 101. And finally, the last way that you can get your hands on some new Eidolons is the LP store. Buying Eidolons with LP, which is an in-game currency, can be very expensive, but there are some good ones available that you can't farm until later game. Honestly though, it's hard to say that's a good use. LP is a great resource you can farm in-game, but it's also one of the best ways to make gold. Every week, you can use your LP to buy ruby coins and roll the gambling table to get items to sell to other players. This is up to you for consideration. Farming LP gets easier past Awakening, so might be better to wait until you're farming enough LP in a week to buy your RC and any limited fortification items you want, and then spend the extra on Eidolons if that's where you're going. Anyway, that's all for today. This is already long enough after all. Next week I'm planning to release the new map oddities videos, but the newbies guide after that will be getting granular about the way stats work in Aura Kingdom. And oh yes, it gets more granular. Anyway, thank you for watching, and just remember, the most important thing is to have fun. If you're worried you're doing it wrong, this is a game. If you're having fun, you're doing it right. Anyway, catch you next time.